Yeah, as our audience fully filters in, I thought that we should probably get started on today's webinar. So good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to you all, wherever you are in the world. And welcome to this week's edition of the Thursday Talk Webinars on Teaming for Peace, our second last webinar of 2020. So just in case those of you who are new or you might not know, my name is Jack Farrell. I am the Manager for Partnerships and Strategic Innovation at Search for Common Ground, and I'm going to be your host today. Today, I am delighted to welcome Branka, AI for Peace Founding Director. And Branka's already hosted a webinar this year, so I'm really excited to welcome her back to the Thursday Talks to lead a discussion on data for peace building and prevention, challenges and opportunities. Just a note, if you have a question during today's presentation, you can write it in the question function on your GoToWebinar dashboard, and we will address it once we reach the Q&A. I'm now going to hand over to today's guest. Branka, you are very welcome back to the Thursday Talks, and feel free to take it away when you're ready.
Thank you so much, Jack. It's such a pleasure to join you again and to join the Thursday Talk. Welcome to everybody in the audience. And I am joining you today to present some of the insights from the latest reports that was published by New York University Center on International Cooperation. So I'm joining you today as a non-resident fellow who authored this report. And I will try to motivate you maybe to go and read more in details about the data for peace building and prevention, but also hopefully motivate you to think also how you can apply some of these lessons in your own work and how you can join if you are not already part of the entire ecosystem of data for peace building and prevention. So this work, I call it a COVID work because it started just with the pandemic. So the entire research was done throughout the pandemic. And as a result of this ecosystem mapping, we published the report that is titled The State of Play and the Way Towards Creating a Community of Practice. So we are giving some set of practical examples, but also pointing to some of the challenges that we have in this space and trying to see together as a community how we can tackle these challenges. Just a few sentences about the Center on International Cooperation. For those of you who are not familiar with their work, they are a nonprofit research center at a New York University, and they work with a vision to advance multilateral action to prevent crisis and build peace, justice, and inclusion. And their mission is to strengthen the cooperation among different stakeholders, so national governments, international organizations, and the wider policy community, again, to advance peace, justice, and inclusion. So with this mission as well, they started the work on prevention and peace building. So this is a program area housed at CIC. And then as part of this program area, they started this work on data for peace building and prevention, organizing a set of events in previous 2 years. So one big conference, and maybe some of the people in the audience participated in this. One was organized in 2019 and the second at the beginning of 2020. And then, so the events were organized to try to gather some of the people who are already working in this field, but also to see who are those new organizations, or maybe the organizations that we are not so much familiar with. And then, inspired by all of the projects that they presented at these conferences, all of the practical applications of data, they decided to do this exercise of ecosystem mapping. And as I said, this report is one of the outcomes of this ecosystem mapping, and I will mention some of the other outcomes or plans that are coming out of this work. So the general aim was to analyze the state of play, to see where we are now, to see is there an ecosystem at all? Is this a global ecosystem? There is a perception sometimes that this work is happening in global north. We went with this ecosystem in mapping the organizations in global south as well, and trying to bring more transparency to the global work in this field of data for peace building and prevention. With the idea to better inform existing, but also new actors who are willing or exploring the ways how to enter the field. We started with this specific objective to map specific organizations and projects that are utilizing cutting-edge data-driven approaches, especially looking into the advanced data science methods, quantitative methods, predictive analytics, AI, machine learning, NLP, natural language processing, and other techniques, and to see how these organizations are utilizing these techniques to address ground level problems in the peace building field. We started with the desk review and trying to see what is already the literature out there that is covering these issues, what are the key documents, but we also complemented this with stakeholder interviews. So we did interviews with maybe some of the traditional actors in this field, so peace and conflict experts, but then also including data scientists and looking at their views and perspectives. We talked with ethicists as well, trying to cover ethical challenges for these fields, and then with peace advocates as well. So with this, we are targeting, and we would like that this report comes to the hands of peace building and prevention practitioners and organizations that are working at this intersection of peace and technology, and all of the organizations and individuals that want to capture the benefits, but also those who are interested in reducing harms of advanced data-driven methodologies deployed around the globe. So we want to recognize that this work is not coming out of nowhere. So we do see it as a continuation of a very important body of work that is already out there. And here we emphasize the importance of peace tech as an entire movement as well, utilizing technology to contribute to peace building, and also as a continuation of digital peace building, looking at this broader nexus between the fields of peace building and digital technologies. So we see data-driven technologies as a sort of a continuation of this work, or maybe one segment of this digital peace building work that we are looking more in details now because of all of the new advancements in data, big data, availability of data, and these technologies not being anymore just a part of big companies or rich universities, but coming to the hands of many organizations, hopefully grassroots organizations as well. So when doing mapping the ecosystem, we are intentionally using the ecosystem phrase or a concept from biology, and we are basically using this entire theory of social scientists, theory of ecosystem by Paul Bloom and Gregory Dees, trying to see how we can basically innovate in this ecosystem. And to be able to do that, we first needed to get to know what this ecosystem is. So who are the actors? What are the relationships between these actors? What are the conditions that are out there, or conditions that need to be there for this ecosystem to innovate? What are the main trends and forces that in some cases, what we saw from our research, enable this ecosystem to flourish, but in other cases, they can also obstruct innovation. So again, to be able to innovate in the ecosystem, we need to know what is the context that we are working in. And what we did, we realized there are of course many trends out there, but we wanted to emphasize two major trends that we believe and people that we interviewed with stressed as well as two major trends that shape the context. and then many other policy standards and partnerships that are impacting the context in which we are working in. So just briefly to mention the two trends, I'm sure the first one familiar to many in this audience, deterioration of peace, security, and human rights. And we are mentioning here the results of research in different organizations out there, 2020 Global Peace Index by International Economics and Peace Institute, 2020 Fragile State Index, Freedom House data, homicide statistics, UNHCR refugee stats. So all of these data, once again, and traditionally in the previous couple of years, are showing a sort of deterioration of peace. Then parallel to this trend, there is another one that is overwhelmingly influencing the field of data for peace, and that's of course the development of exponential technologies. And this comes as a result of many factors, not only the availability of data and more data and big data that we have today, but also the storage capabilities, the lower costs of storing the data or gathering the data, of cloud access. The trends in the data in previous couple of years are showing, or even a decade, are showing a constant increase of investments. We do see that many of these investments are, of course, happening in the business field. So what we are looking into now is how we can utilize these advances that are happening in business field, and maybe see how we can utilize this in peace building, or maybe learn from other fields that were more successful in this adoption of data or exponential technologies, like development field, or lately humanitarian field, or even tackling the climate change. In this regard, we are looking into the developments of different tech for good or data for good, or different organizations call them differently, even AI for good organizations and initiatives that are potentially or that are trying to see how to open pathways for utilization of these technologies for good. So peace building is a sort of a subfield of this. So this report is looking into possibilities of utilizing these opportunities. Then we look into mapping of different policies and standards and partnerships that are already out there. So this is not something specifically related to peace building field. This is a more of a broader context of data. And we are mentioning just some of them, like OECD AI principles, many, not only international organizations, but the governments as well, adopting ethical principles and standards for implementation of new technologies. There are organizations being established only with this goal, like Partnership on AI, trying to facilitate cooperation between different organizations in different sectors. Even the summits or conferences that are facilitating this type of cooperation of utilizing new technologies, like AI for Good Global Summit organized by the United Nations. Another, I think naturally somehow, because we did this ecosystem mapping in the midst of pandemic, we looked into COVID-19 as well. And realized that this is actually an example of so-called external force. So this theory, social theory of ecosystem, is looking into some of the external forces that are influencing the ecosystem in different ways. And this is what is happening currently with COVID-19 and with how this pandemic is impacting the advancements of data science and different applications. Of course, many of these applications are happening in health field, but we are looking into, again, how potentially the peace building field can utilize this for peace building goals, but also looking at how we can utilize data for seeing what are those impacts of COVID-19 to peace and security and human rights. And having this in mind, I just wanted quickly to mention to the audience that one of the outcomes of the report was the creation of this Data for Peace Dialogues, monthly webinars that Central and International Cooperation is organizing to talk more in depth about some of the issues that we mentioned in the reports. So for those of you in the audience who are interested to learn more about this impact of COVID-19 on peace, conflict, and violence, I recommend, and I believe Jack will share the link in the chat, for you to see this webinar and to look how organizations are actually exploring data and using big data to see the impacts of COVID on peace and conflict. And I know that Team Receiver from PeaceTech was already a guest at one of the Thursday talks. So I'm a big fan of Thursday talks and following the conversations. I think this is a good way to see what are the new things that happened in the PeaceTech violence tracker, and then to see how some of the other organizations are applying data for peace building in the midst of pandemic. To come back to the report now, so of course, as we are mapping the ecosystem, the important part of the report were actually actors. And this is not something new. Of course, many ecosystem mappings are providing different classifications of actors. So this is what we did as well. We are mentioning different organizations or different universities inside of academia, civil society organizations, governmental and intergovernmental organizations, and the private sector, of course. And here are, I'm mentioning here only some of the examples. There are many more in the report. But again, it's important to mention that this is not this is still an open-ended process in a way. Mapping of such sort can have a deadline. So we are planning to continue this mapping, and I will announce some of the things in this sense as well. When we looked into the actors, and I'm specifically dedicating a slide for this because we see a great potential for the ecosystem to grow, looking at those bystanders. Again, from the theory, something or a group of actors that don't necessarily are already in the ecosystem. They don't work from academia or private sector or civil society organizations. They are not applying data directly for peace building, but there is a great potential to do that. So we mapped some of the virtual or physical gatherings of hundreds of data. So most of them are virtual now, of course. Gathering data scientists, ML and AI experts who are putting their skills into building innovative AI solutions to real-world problems. We are mapping some of them from different continents, Somdena, DataKind, Code for Africa, and Zindi, and we believe they have the potential to actually build bridges in a way between the traditional peace builders and the data science community. And we go more into details in the report of all of the ways how this can be done to overcome some of the challenges that traditional peace builders have in utilizing data. So we believe that these networks can be a helping tool to overcome these challenges and actually utilize new technologies for peace building. As I mentioned, this is not a done process. So we did map more than 200 organizations in a Excel format, mapping also the technologies that they're using. They're using public or private data and different data-driven approaches that they're using. So what we plan to do now is actually putting this into an interactive map. An online map that will be publicly available, not only for people to use and scroll through different continents, different countries to see who are the organizations or individuals working on data-driven approaches for peace building, but we also plan to open this map for organizations to actually register their work. We are very aware of our own limitations as well to reach out to all of the organizations out there. We believe there are many, many more, and we believe that there needs to be more transparency in this field. We want to give more space for them to showcase their work and to be mapped here. So this is an invitation for the audience to keep following our work. We plan to publish this at the beginning of 2021, and then we will have a process of inviting organizations to join and to register their work and to stay connected through this interactive platform. The core of the reports are, of course, I guess many would expect that those cutting edge technologies on the horizon out there. We looked into some of them and we wanted to see what is the potential of future impact. And just to clarify that this is only a sample from the interviews and our desk research of some of applications that can have a promising role for influencing the peace building field, either now or in the future, because many of these applications are still in the testing mode, so to say. Then again, this selection is intended to be only suggestive. It's not a comprehensive, similar with the actors. The same goes with the cutting edge technologies. As I said, some initiatives, well, some of them are quite traditional as well. They're not new, but they're ways how they can be reinvented thanks to more available techniques. And some of them are very new in early stage, and they all represent this potential, as I said, to use the advanced data approaches to enable the creation of more peaceful, just, and free societies. This is a selection of some of them, and I will not have time here to go through all of them in detail, so this is an invitation to look in the report itself. And I do want to mention, maybe just recognizing that we are organizing this discussion today on the International Human Rights Day. I want to say, and maybe dedicate more time now to talk about some of the technologies that can be utilized to protect human rights, for civilian protection, or for enabling the work of human rights defenders and human rights organizations. So I'm combining two approaches here. So we mapped some of the applications of computer vision tools to help human rights defenders, and then looking more in depth about satellite imagery for human rights protection. And there are two project examples. Well, each of the technologies, cutting-edge technologies that we are mentioning in the report comes with a one real-life example, project example of how this approach is being utilized to tackle some of the peace-building problems, peace, security, or human rights problems. I want to mention here that utilizing, for example, satellite imagery as such is not something new. There are some organizations that are traditionally doing this, and we are mentioning the work of Amnesty International, and there are many other examples how satellite images were used to point and allocate to forced labor camps in North Korea, mass graves in Burundi, Boko Haram crimes in Nigeria, human rights abuses in Darfur, forced relocation in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and lately even in the United States, a project, an example of utilizing satellite imagery to prove the rapid construction of migrant tents for keeping families and children at the US-Mexico border. The case where we go more into details, the recent case in the report is from China, coming from Xinjiang province, and so the satellite imagery helped the human rights defenders to point to existence and again rapid building of so-called re-education camps for Uyghur population in China. So this is the case that we go more into details in the reports. And then just to mention how important this can be, this is the case of International Criminal Courts and the case of former Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir. And the court basically relied on satellite imagery to prove the human rights abuses in Darfur. So why I'm mentioning all of these examples, because I wanted to say that maybe satellite imagery as such is not a new approach. What is new is the fact that images are becoming of a much higher quality and as such much more useful for, especially for courts, as we saw in this example of Omar al-Bashir. But then there is also this element of so-called democratizing of these technologies. So previously, the satellite imagery were available only to governments or security agencies or big organizations as Amnesty, and they were quite expensive. What we see in latest developments is that they are becoming much more available, not only with lower cost, in some cases even for free, not only for governments, but even for educational institutions, non-governmental organizations as well, and activists, as we saw from many of the examples of our bystanders and AI hubs actually utilizing satellite images. Another new element, or what we call, and why we call this cutting edge technology, is this overlapping of satellite imagery and AI and machine learning developments. And we are mentioning this case of a team led by researchers at Swansea University, and this is actually an entire network of organizations, including Global Legal Action Network, WeFrame, utilizing and partnering with Syrian Archive and Yemeni Archive. And this group of organizations is combining videos and photos from thousands of sources, including journalists, civilians, social media platforms, and processing them with machine learning-based systems to detect all situations of banned cluster munitions being used in attacks in Syria and Yemen. So using cluster munition is a war crime, and it is basically estimated that it would take an individual almost 3,000 days to search through this information, while the machine learning system would require only 30 days. So we see here how ML systems can be a helping hand. Also, they are much stronger in noticing certain patterns that human eye is not able to do. So documenting such war crimes and human rights violations is, of course, an important effort to stop the violators through legal challenges, and definitely the technology is showing now through these and many other examples how this can be achieved. So with this, I will switch. Of course, I am inviting everybody to look at other examples. There are many other interesting utilizations of data for peacemaking, for dialogue, for tackling the human trafficking, sex trafficking, many other applications that can potentially become bigger or scale in our field in the future. The report, as I said, covers some of the challenges and constraints, and some of them are, in general, very familiar for peace builders, and they are, in a way, repeated in the big data world as well, like lack of data or lack of high quality data, issues like data protection and privacy. An interesting paradox that is happening in our field, this is this risk of misuse which we are familiar with, but then what is happening as well is this risk of misuse, so missed opportunities that are out there. So we want to look at both and to see how we can safeguard our field from misuse, but also not miss the opportunities that are out there. We are pointing to issues as data weaponization and both financial and capacity constraints that many of our organizations are struggling with. The problem of lack of user-centric approaches, the problem that many of these technologies are Western-centric, they are coming from West, and they need to include more user-centric approaches and to utilize basically the knowledge that grassroots organizations are bringing to this field. We are dedicating a special part of this report to ethics and all of the ethical issues, again, to cover some of the general ethical considerations like issues of privacy and trust in data, or problems of reinforcing gender, racial, or other biases, but also inviting this ecosystem to think more about these specific challenges for the field of data-driven peace building. So we saw that there are many reports out there published in the peace building field covering the data privacy issues, and especially in the humanitarian field. A lot of work has been done traditionally and now as well. What we want to see is if this is enough for a peace building field. Is there anything else that we need to pay attention to actually make sure that we are ethically using data while working in conflict and post-conflict areas, and while we are working with vulnerable populations? And just for the end, quickly, we are finishing with a set of recommendations as well that are coming from the interviews that we conducted. And most of them are going into the direction of how to strengthen the entire ecosystem. We are giving a set of recommendations starting from building trust. We realize that there is a huge problem still with trust in new technologies, especially in our field, which comes, of course, because of many negative applications and unintended consequences, misuse cases as well. So what this report is trying to do is to shed a light to some of the positive applications and to motivate more positive applications in the field. This is not especially new. The recommendation, of course, for the capacity building, and we are recommending some steps how this can be done without big financial constraints. We are mentioning in this direction innovation as well, stressing that innovation doesn't necessarily need to bring completely new products, that there are already many products and approaches that are free and available out there that peace builders can use. Principles and frameworks is something that we are also recommending, especially looking at what peace builders can bring to the data field, not the other way around. And we do mention the do no harm approach, of course, and the conflict sensitivity. And we believe that more space needs to be dedicated to this issue while developing new technologies or thinking how new data approaches can be applied in peace building. The last one, and I want to finish with this one because we are coming with a practical recommendation as well, and this is building community and partnerships. And we want to stress the importance and the positive examples of many communities out there, many traditional ones as well. DME for Peace is one of them, Build Up, Alliance for Peace Building, Peace Direct, and we want to see how to interlink this with new AI hubs and networks that are working in data field. One of the practical examples that we are, or the recommendations that we are giving is creating a specific hub for data for peace building and prevention, using the model or many other models, but what we are looking at as a potential model is the Center for Humanitarian Data, and what OCHA basically did with this, facilitating the entire field and investing in community, building the community of practice. We do believe that something similar is needed for the peace building community. This is one of the practical outcomes that I already mentioned. So once we finish the report, we realized that there is more interest in going more in details with discussing some of the topics that we are mentioning in the report. So having this in mind and having this as a goal, we started Data for Peace Dialogues webinar series that is happening on a monthly basis, covering some of the topics, and again, shedding a light to some of the practical examples from the field. I am, of course, inviting all of you to join our dialogues. So they're happening every last Tuesday in a month, and they're publicly available. And all of the recordings are also available online. The other product that I mentioned is a map, and there will be more results that are coming out of the recommendations that we are giving in the report. So this is again an invitation to stay in touch with NYU CAC and with myself as well. I will stop here. I look forward to hear the questions as well. It was hard to put the entire report in one presentation. Maybe I took a bit more time, but I really want to hear your comments. Comments are very welcome, and questions, and I'm looking forward to this.
Branka, thank you so much. As someone who read the report as soon as it came out, I can tell you did an incredible job of cramming that into about 30 minutes. So thank you. And to our audience, now is your time to shine. We're going to open up for a few questions and comments. You can submit those in two ways. The first is through the question function on your GoToWebinar dashboard, which will allow you to type your question. The second is to click on the hand icon to raise your hand, which will allow myself to unmute your microphone so you can ask your question or make a comment to Branka live. When you do submit your question, we ask that you submit your name and affiliation. Just a note, these talks are recorded and posted on Dean for Peace, so those who are not able to join us at this time can go back and listen to the presentation and the discussion. Now, Branka, I posted all the links sort of for the sort of different sort of events, the webinars as the LinkedIn group in the chat box. So if anybody wants those, please feel free to access them. But I'm going to start this question. I'm going to start this discussion with my moderator's privilege. Because this is a topic that I'm fascinated in, and I think there's huge potential in the peace building field. Something I've been grappling with an awful lot, Branka, is this concept of conflict sensitivity and artificial intelligence and machine learning. I see many reports and many sort of organizations with fleshed out guidelines and ethical principles for this work, but I often feel like they're targeted more at the human rights or humanitarian space and lack that explicit, reference or inference to conflict sensitivity. Like, do you have sort of a set of principles, or are there a set of ideals where you think that we can flesh out for conflict sensitive use of such emerging technology?
That's a great question. Thanks so much, Jack. And you're reading my mind as well. Like, this is something that I'm really asking as a question. Not only asking as a question, but this is something that we see as a trend. And you mentioned the guidelines. So there are a lot of guidelines now, which is a positive development, definitely. Because at some point these technologies started being developed without any constraints, and this field slowly started introducing ethical guidelines. And what you noticed, the emphasis on human rights, that's something new. So that was not present in the ethical guidelines. This is basically an intervention coming from the human rights field, noticing that maybe the ethical guidelines are not strong enough to facilitate the protection of human rights. And this is definitely a positive development. And for anybody who is interested more in this, the Berkman Klein Center did the entire analysis of how many of these principles and the documents are including the human rights protection. So this is a sort of a development of AI and exponential technologies through the human rights lens. So what we are asking is exactly your question, Jack. How many of them are actually mentioning the peace building approach or sustaining peace approach or conflict sensitivity? Let's call it conflict sensitivity as something that we know as peace builders, what we do when we enter the conflict and post-conflict areas, when we design our interventions. There is barely any ethical principle or set of documents that is covering these issues. And we hope that, I mean, this is for us and this is for the audience here as well, and for myself and you, how we can actually facilitate this work now, maybe producing something similar as Berkman Klein did for human rights, to do that for conflict sensitivity and to see how many of these approaches are taking this into consideration. So this is also one of the recommendations from our report, that this work has to be done to, again, bring more data into this, you know, to show that there is a gap in this sense. And there are many practical examples why this is needed. We can just look at what happened in Myanmar, what happened with utilization of Facebook or misuse of the platform to facilitate even genocide, and how easily the platform is being used in Myanmar, in a country where Facebook basically functions as an internet. You know, how different it is to handle the hate speech or call for online violence, how this is easily spread to physical violence in a country that is so fragile. There was a similar example as well with Facebook policy of handling the hate speech during the protests and handling the utilization of a frog. This is a very interesting case, how different symbols have different meanings in different countries, how this was banned as a hate speech in US because of all of the racial hate issues, and how differently this is perceived in Hong Kong, where this was a symbol of protest. So if you ban the same symbol in different countries, you are basically creating even bigger, or don't ban on the other side if you don't handle the hate speech. So those are all of these elements of conflict sensitivity that we need to think how to introduce. So this was maybe a longer answer, Jack, but I think this is a huge question and definitely needs more space.
Absolutely. I'm really excited. Like, one of the I've noticed, and you touched on in your presentation, and we've touched on it throughout the year. We did a digital peacebuilding series with build up, like throughout the summer, is that COVID-19 has caused a lot of peacebuilding organizations to catch up with technology, or at least, you know, become technologically literate. So I think this is obviously an emerging space, and that peacebuilding organizations will increasingly feel empowered to sort of get involved in you know, applying conflict-sensitive principles to technology. I'm going to wrap up with one question, Branka, that merges a ton of the questions that we received from the audience. And that is, you know, one of the hesitancies when I talk to organizations about applying, you know, machine learning or artificial intelligence principles or technology to their work is the lack of expertise. And as soon as they see, like, a natural language processing, their brain automatically shuts off. So how would you advise sort of peacebuilding organizations with a lack of technological expertise on their staff to move forward with potentially integrating new technologies? And secondly, and this is a question from Kala, and Kala writes, like, is there a place that they can go to access, you know, basic resources on artificial intelligence in the peacebuilding field, or basic resources on artificial intelligence generally?
Yes, let me answer first the question about the lack of expertise. This is something that we saw as well when we started mapping and then organizing different discussions on this topic as well, that most often the organizations are in a way frightened with this words, as you mentioned, like these huge expressions, you know, like machine learning or natural language process or even artificial intelligence. So I I think that there is definitely a need for simplifying these terms so the organizations and individuals can see that it's not so difficult to tap into the field. So I'm not saying that it's not that difficult to become a data scientist, and I'm also, this is what we are referring in the report as well. We don't think that people should become, that all of the people should become data scientists. So this is the beauty of this field and the fact that artificial intelligence is not only a computer science discipline anymore. So it became so embedded in our society that it's a very wide social science discipline as well. So there is a huge movement of investing in this diversity in building the technologies from the design phase to the development and the implementation as well. And I would like peace builders to know that there is a space for them in this direction. So this is one way how they can get engaged. You need to be there at the table when these technologies are being developed and implemented, and especially when we look at conflict zones, or not even conflict, even when we talk about sustaining peace. When we look into the democracies, not only non-democratic society, you know, peaceful societies as well as conflict societies, there is a need for peace builders to be engaged and to pass their expertise while we are shaping these technologies. The other thing is the way how these organizations can actually utilize the data. And we talked last time, Jake, about this, your wish as well, you know, how you can use all of the data that you have. How organizations can start using some technologies without actually having this expertise. And this is this link with AI hubs and different AI networks that we are mentioning. There is a huge movement of volunteers wishing to pass their knowledge in data science to different socially engaged work. So the majority of this work for now is happening in climate change, and I think this is good, but I also think that these people don't have enough knowledge about peace building to be able to volunteer their knowledge and time into this field. So there is a need of merging the two groups and connecting them with each other for the peace builders to be able to tap into this field. And I think the Peace Tech Lab and the project that they've done in the midst of pandemic is one very good example that can use as motivation for other organizations to see how they can start using even crowdsourcing of data and then switch from this traditional crowdsourcing and volunteer engagement to more advanced machine learning, or they're even utilizing natural language processing now. So I think this is maybe the role for us to showcase more of these examples in details and to give an idea, including the practical steps to organizations. This is the person that you can contact. So this is what CIC is trying to do now, to build the entire database of experts and then to do a matchmaking in a way with organizations that want to explore or see how they can utilize data in their work. Sorry, Jake, I forgot the name of the person who asked the second question, where to look at this. So this is the thing. We don't think there is basically an integrated space where you can do that, and this is why we are suggesting the opening of a hub for data for peace and prevention. So if you're working in humanitarian field now, the data hub, the humanitarian data hub would be a place to do that. It's an open space where people share their algorithms, their data resources. You can go there. It's in the website is open to check what are all of the things there. If you're a part of the community, they facilitate the capacity building. We believe something like that needs to exist for peace building field and peace builders, and we hope we will reach that point sometime soon.
Branka, thank you so much. We are at time for today's discussion. I just want to thank you for such a detailed presentation and for your work in the space. I think 2020 was the year that the peacebuilding field began to embrace technology. And there are so many creative and innovative thinkers and implementers on the line today. I'm really curious to see what happens. Like, were you inspired by this to take some of the concepts or maybe potentially apply artificial intelligence to your work? Let us know. We'd love to hear from you guys. We'd love to hear from the community. Just a note to you all that this webinar is recorded and will be on Davy for Peace's Media Gallery later today. So please feel free to return to it and share it with your colleagues. Thank you again, Branka, for such a great presentation. And thank you to our audience. This is my last webinar of 2020. I will be going on leave, leaving you in the amazing hosting hands of Jennifer Howell next week for our final webinar of 2020, where we are going to be showcasing the work of the Stopping the Success Consortium on successful locally led transitions from INGOs to local implementers. So we hope you're able to join us then. Thank you for your support throughout the year, and I look forward to chatting with you all in 2021. In the meantime, take care. Hope you have a restful holiday period, and I will see you in the new year.
Thank you, Jack, and thank you everybody for your questions. Stay safe and healthy. Bye.